Greetings, everyone. This is part 3 of our 3-part series with Dr. Michelle Nace on the COVID-19 vaccine. In this 15 minutes, she's going to answer many of the frequently asked questions that she's received, as well as questions that many of you sent in during our series about the COVID vaccine. But first, I also want to check in on how are you feeling today, Dr. Nace, a day after.
Okay.
You feel
the day
okay?
after getting the shot, like 24 hours ago, I got it. And the thing I noticed is just my arm, like where I got it. Oh yeah, this little tender. I didn't notice it at all until I bumped it up against a chair. I'm like, oh yeah, feels like somebody punched me just a little too hard in the old deltoid.
Yeah,
But,
totally. Okay.
Otherwise, I'm okay.
But other than that, and if you were feeling symptoms, like if you had a headache or a fever or that kind of soreness, that's just the message that your body is doing all of those things it needs to do, right? It's reading this instruction manual about messenger RNA. It's figuring out spiky proteins. If it sees these spiky proteins, it's eliminating them. So your body is doing, that is just a sign that your body is doing exactly what it should be doing, right? That's what I've learned.
Well said.
Okay.
Well said.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I sent you questions that staff and parents and students sent in, and then you have some other questions. So I'm just going to turn it over to you to go through questions.
Okay, so I am going to read some of the questions I have here. One of the questions that we have, which has been not uncommon, is questions regarding people who are pregnant or breastfeeding, or and can they get the vaccine? And so those are questions that the exact answer isn't known, but I'm going to give you the wording that they actually recommend. We do have guidance from the CDC. So if you are in one of the groups that is now recommended that you get the vaccine, it's recommended that it's offered to those people who are pregnant, considering pregnancy, or breastfeeding. It's recommended, but she can choose to not be vaccinated as well. But because the vaccine is not a live vaccine and it's this mRNA, we have no reason to think there's going to be an increased risk, but that should be a choice that woman makes regarding whether or not she wants to get the vaccine for that.
Awesome. Okay, this like we talked about critical thinking.
Critical thinking, yes. Yep. Another question about the shots and how many would it get and what's the time period. So depending on the company, it's the ones we have right now are 2 doses. So with the first one, that's Pfizer, that's out now, it's a dose now and a dose 21 days later. And we're trying to stay as close to that 21 days as possible because that's how the trials were done. We have a little bit of a window, a couple days, but we are aiming for exactly on that 21 days. Okay. With the Moderna, it's 28 days, so 4 weeks later. And then as far as when will you be, quote, immune, that happens about 2 weeks after your second dose. So after that time period, you're considered to have that immunity that we would expect from getting vaccinated. Okay. So that's related to a couple other different questions, which is, what if I only get one? Do I still have some immunity? And the answer is, we don't know exactly your percentage. There is some benefit from one, but like I said yesterday, you just have soldiers, you don't have an army. And we want you to have an army, and that's that second dose is going to change those soldiers into an army.
Okay.
And then regarding that question is, if I get the vaccine, do I still need to wear a mask and socially distance and wash my hands and stay 6 feet away? The answer is yes, 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 and yes.
Yes.
So even after you are getting your first shot and your second shot, and 2 weeks later, now that your immune system is there, you still need to do all those things. And here's the why. We know from the studies that when you get the vaccination, that your immune system, you are protected from having a lower chance of having symptoms from COVID-19. But it's not 100% effective. There's still 5%-ish that could still get COVID-19. But what we don't know yet is that although I cannot get COVID-19 from the vaccine, what I don't know is those people who are vaccinated, if they come in contact with someone who is positive, can then I spread that to someone else? And we don't know that answer yet. We will get more information. It will be something we expect to get more answer. But in the meantime, people afterwards the vaccine are treated the same way people are vaccinated until we have more information. That means the same quarantine rules, the same isolation rules, the same airline travel rules. At this point, it's all the same game until we know more information with more studies down the road.
Okay, awesome. I know I think about that too. It's right. It's just a good habit to be in, right? The good hand hygiene, the hand sanitizer, the mask all the time, right? Like you just want, it's like muscle memory, right? You just remember, oh, I'm getting out of my car, going to the store. I got to put my mask on. And I know I was in a meeting and somebody asked, as parents, what can we do to start preparing? My thing was practice all that mitigation at home with your kids. Like start now, get them used to it, get them accustomed to it so that it's not a sudden new thing, right? I mean, practice the good mask wearing, practice the hand wash, all of those things to think about. So it just becomes like a routine in your brain.
True. And with it being cold like it is, that mask, when you walk from your car to Fred's or Safeway,
Yeah.
it actually keeps you a little bit warmer.
I know.
Doesn't it?
We call those a COVID win. Like, what's a COVID win? Like, oh yeah, now I'm going to wear this mask and my face is warmer. It just makes sense.
Totally. I have some questions about pre-existing conditions that someone sent in. So the pre-existing condition, there are not the one contraindication that says you should not get the vaccine is if you have had anaphylaxis to parts that are in the vaccine.
Okay.
And if you're not sure if you fall in that qualification, you should talk with your healthcare provider. There are some others that say precautions and it should be considered. And if you have questions about your medical health that you are not sure, that is a reach out to your medical provider and say, you know my history, here's what it is, should I get that? But there are not any listed medical conditions like heart disease, hypertension, asthma, any of those that say you are not eligible for the vaccine.
Okay.
The only one that says as flat out you shouldn't is if you've had an anaphylactic reaction to an injectable medication or a previous vaccine.
Okay, awesome. That's good information because I know there's been lots of questions about that one.
There's also some questions about someone who has a child or somebody who might have a particular type of autoimmune or hormonal type allergy. What do they say about the vaccine? Well, the first thing to remember is that anyone 16 and younger has not been approved for the vaccine. But if the child should be older, that is something isn't a gray area to decide. You should directly talk with the healthcare provider and say, given this history, what should we do with this kiddo? There's a question about, is quarantine and masking even helping? There seems to be more and more cases every day. And I would say, yes, masks do help. And yes, quarantine do help. But the problem is you have to actually wear the mask and you actually have to stay in quarantine. And so that creates some complications because sometimes those things are hard to do because you want to hug your loved ones. You want to be with your friends. You want to get out of the house. And so I would say that it's hard to be compliant with those. And that's why we urge you to try to do to the very best of your possibilities to be compliant with those. And they do make a difference.
Yes, I agree. And I would say those things too are going to be important when kids come back to school too. They have to wear the masks. They have to wear them appropriately. We got to follow those quarantine and isolation rules. And that'll be really important too.
Okay. I have a question, just to review. Some of this was answered yesterday, but we're going to go over it in case we have people on there. One, can I get COVID-19 from the vaccine? Why don't you go ahead and answer that one?
The answer is no, because this particular vaccine does not contain any COVID in it. It just is messenger RNA, which has technology that's been around for a while, but hasn't been used widely. So no, you can't get COVID from the vaccine.
You are absolutely right. Gold star. And another question, if I already had COVID-19, should I get the vaccine? Why don't you take that one, Sarah?
I also know that since I've had COVID-19. So the recommendation right now from the CDC is that in general, they think for 90 days after you test positive, you can't get COVID again. So if you're still in that 90-day window, the recommendation would be, why don't you wait and let some other people get the vaccine before you? Maybe like let somebody cut in line. Now, if you're after that 90-day window like I am, then the recommendation would be, yes, go ahead and get the vaccine.
Okay. But if I was, say I was 45, if I was 45 days out and I really wanted it, can I get it?
Of course you can get it. Yes. Okay. Right.
What about if I just got it 6 days ago and I already still have symptoms? Should I get it?
Nope. You should never get a vaccine while you're symptomatic. I think that goes for any vaccine too. Never get a vaccine while you're symptomatic.
This, especially with this one, because the risk you would have to the person giving you the vaccine, you are now could have potentially, and that's the reason why they especially, not because they're as worried about you as they are worried about others that you might spread that to.
We call it the isolation ward in my house. That's where you stay when you have COVID. So you have your own bathroom, you have your own bedroom, we deliver you food.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's some been questions because it's been in the news about allergic reactions to the vaccine. And so I wanted to just touch on that because there was a question regarding vaccines.
Okay.
and allergies. So we have heard some case reports about people who have had an anaphylaxis, like even here in Alaska,
Mhm.
after getting the vaccine. And so what I want to put out that is this is a rare occasion. It can happen with other vaccines. It can happen with other shots. It can happen with other foods and stuff. We just don't hear about that all. And when it happens here in Alaska, it hits us a little closer to home. So it makes us a little more worried. So keeping in perspective, the overall number of this from what we're seeing is low. It's rare, but it does happen. So that's why the vaccines are always given in an area which can handle this. Handling an anaphylaxis in a medical setting is something we do regularly. We are
Mhm.
prepared for it. There are things we can do to help people through that. And that's why people are observed afterwards. These reactions, when they're happening minutes afterwards. So in some people, generic kind of plan is to watch them for 15 minutes. If we have increased concerns, then they might be watched for 30 minutes.
Okay.
And so we expect this to happen to some degree. And the press, and we're going to get right down in this because all eyes are on the vaccine. So it does happen extremely rare. We have ways in which to treat it, and we'll be prepared for that part.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
People ask a question, why isn't this okay for children yet? And again, it's the when they're having a new medicine, a new vaccine out there, they start with adults because adults can consent and say, yes, I'll do it. I'll be part of that party. It's harder to do that with children. So it kind of works its way down age. So additionally, 18 and up, now it's down to age 16. There are currently studies in action right now that are down to age 12. And hopefully in the upcoming months, we will get more of that results. But we don't have yet studies that I am aware of that are under age 12. And as you get further and further from adulthood, kids get more and more different in terms of how they might react against something. We've also seen that younger age group hasn't had kind of the secondary effects that we've seen with older. So the focus has been more on that. So we do anticipate that's going to come down the road, but that younger than 12, you can expect that's going to be a while before we have that kind of. So how we can help those kiddos is is by vaccinating ourselves and those around them to help protect them as well.
Awesome. There was a question in the Q&A about asthma too. Is asthma just like any other pre-existing condition?
Yep. There's not a definite contraindication about asthma and getting that. It's more focused on, have you had anaphylaxis? If you have anaphylaxis, that should be something that is talked about. So we can make sure we put you in the best area for that. Did you get another question on there too?
Well, somebody asked if you'd already answered about if you missed the second dose. So I just put in the chat. That means you have some soldiers, but you don't have a full army yet.
Correct. There's some questions about mandatory. Can we make this mandatory shot? Like, why don't we make it mandatory? And that is not something that is being done at this point. And the reason is, especially under emergency use authorization, when something's in that, because it's not officially fully approved by the FDA, it's approved for emergency use. And when something's in emergency use, you can't really make people do it. It's an emergency use. Now, down the road, similar to other vaccine, might it change classifications, but there's no plan to do that at this point. There's no, even from the healthcare industry, from the school district, that is not something that is happening to make this vaccine mandatory. It's a choice. We're hoping with the education and learning about it, it's something you become more comfortable with and can consider it for yourself and for your family.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay. And let's see if we have any other questions that you had on your side.
Nope. Oh, my phone. No, those are my phone started ringing. No, I don't have any other questions on my side.
I think we're at 9:30. The last one I have is about side effects and adverse effects. So side effects are what happen right after you get the immunization. We do expect those. Like I have, my arm is sore. Some people might feel a little fatigued, feel like achy all over. That can happen. That's because your immune soldiers are being created in your body, and that's a normal body response. The other concern is adverse events, which can happen like weeks down the road. We tend to see those if they're going to happen by 6 to 8 weeks. By 2 months, we feel pretty confident it's not going to happen, but we are continuing to watch this. If it's not happened after 6 months, much more confidence with it as well. And they have not seen any adverse events in the control groups that or the study groups that they've had so far. So there are no reported adverse events regarding this.
Okay, awesome. Well, Dr. Nace, I really cannot thank you enough. This has been so fun and delightful. Thank you for being a guest. And then also just thank you for your service. I mean, healthcare, so much service that you give over your entire life, but especially in these past 9 months, I think it's been, in terms of being truly on the front lines, which maybe the science, is very exciting to like experience something like this and be part of history in the making. But I just know you have given so much time and expertise to us now, to the district. So I just cannot thank you enough how appreciative we are for your time, your knowledge, your care, most of all, because I can just sense that this is where that all comes from, right? Care for all of us in the community and for our whole Fairbanks community as a whole. So thank
You
you.
are absolutely welcome, and it has been a pleasure. I know working through the school district and seeing those educators who are on the front line, it's got to be stressful. There's so many
Mhm.
questions out there, and sometimes you don't know, where can I get this information? And so we are more than happy to be that resource to help give you that information as it comes available to us.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nace. Have a wonderful whatever holiday you may celebrate, or solstice. Let's just think about solstice, right? Solstice is coming up. Woohoo! Our favorite
Perfect.
time of year to get to switch over to the gaining light. I hope you get to get outside and enjoy, and family, and we'll just be thinking about you and hoping that all continues to go well as we work through this history in the making process.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.